Good morning. I'm proud to present my Capstone Project to showcase my creativity using artificial intelligence, machine learning, Python tools that I've mastered during the latest International AI, Python and Robotics Bootcamp. In this project, Toby will quiz you on smart cities, smart cars, and smart houses. Toby will take you on a journey in his Tesla to his smart house. We'll open the door with face recognition. Toby will get the current temperature reading from a sensor on Quarky. The user will be able to adjust the volume of music using hand gestures. The user will use object recognition to see what's in the fridge. Toby will ask ChatGPT for healthy lunch options based on the content of the fridge, and then argue with sarcastic AI. And then lastly, I will use machine learning model to sort waste into recyclable and non-recyclable items. In this project, there are 6 scenes. In scene 1, the quiz, I've used multiple lists to store the question and the 3 options separately. And then I also use an empty list and add to that list to make sure that when I choose 4 random questions from the available 14 questions, that I don't ask the same question twice. So here I utilize what we've learned in session 1 about variables, loops, conditional statements, string handling to concatenate the parts to display, and the lists. In scene 2, I've used very basic for loops and animation. So it corresponds with what we've learned in session 2, game development, sprite movement. Obviously, I use debugging through the whole program. And then this particular quiz corresponds with the food chain game that we wrote in session 2. In session 3, we did face detection, and that's what I apply in my 3rd scene. I use face recognition on the stage to set the class and then compare it with the feed from the camera to open the door. Then in scene 4, I use the Quarky sensor. I've added the temperature and humidity sensor to Quarky and connected that to the program. So it gives you a temperature reading. And then I use hand recognition, what we've done in session 5 and 8, to adjust the volume of music that is playing in the living room. In the 5th scene, I do object recognition. So what we've done in session 7, and there I recognize the 8 objects. Then session 9, we learned about machine learning. I use that in scene 6, where I've created my own model with examples so that when you show items to the camera, it will tell you whether it's recyclable or not. I've also used ChatGPT in the 5th scene to ask questions and argue with ChatGPT, and also to do a little bit of translation right at the end. Okay, let's run through my program. The same title slide that we've just discussed, all the aspects that I cover, the 6 different scenes, and then when I press spacebar, the spacebar disappears because I broadcast a message to the sprite spacebar to hide itself. Okay, now Toby will do the quiz. Note how the spacing is done with line breaks so that the options appear underneath each other. For streetlights, let's say A. Let's say I answer incorrectly. Then Toby will say what the correct answer is as ABC as well as the correct words. Toby keeps track in the score, and then finally Toby will do a little calculation to work out my percentage. Here I use broadcast again to be able to switch that sprite on and off, or hide and show it repeatedly. Note how the movement of this sprite is done gradually, so a turn is not just a left turn 90 degrees, but 10 times 9 degrees. Now in this scene, there's the face recognition. At this stage, the program will use the picture on the phone to set the class, and I'm going to press D to see if it still recognizes me. So the camera activates, and then the door opens. You can see when my hand, the middle finger position, the Y value of the middle finger is low down. The music is soft. And then as I move my middle finger up, the music volume increases. The volume will even set to a negative number, and then you obviously won't be able to hear it. At the same time, you saw that the temperature, according to Quarky's sensor, is displayed in the scene. My smart fridge can tell me what's in the fridge. So at this point, Toby changes costume to the square and identifies the objects in the fridge: donut and apple, banana, cake, broccoli, carrots, and an apple. And then Toby asked for 3 options for lunch, healthy options for lunch, using those items.
Here are 3 healthy lunch options: veggie and fruit platter, sandwich, or steamed veggies.
And then Toby asked, what about the cake and the donut?
Of course, the cake and donut are the epitome of health and nutrition.
So that's what the sarcastic AI answers. And then Toby asked, well, if you're my friend, what about the cake and the donut?
Hey, how about we save the cake and donut for dessert later on?
And then in this scene, Toby will use the machine learning class that I created to tell which items can be recycled and which not. I couldn't import it into this program, so I'll show you that separately. Thank you so much for the amazing bootcamp.
Exclamation mark Dhanyavad Chandra Bootcamp Kalie.
Okay, let me show you my machine learning class I've created. Waste sorter, recyclable or not. There are so many sample images from the internet of items that are not recyclable, and then also many pictures, 98 of them, with composite pictures of examples of items that can be recycled as well as single items. When I trained it, I actually added more and more examples until I was happy that the training was good enough. And then I can test it now, so that you can see that it It's the correct response for various items. And let's see if we test this model with a webcam. How accurate it is. It's relatively sure that this is recyclable, and that's correct. Not recyclable because it's food. Toilet paper is not recyclable. A phone is not recyclable. Now I would like to explain the code that I've used in this project. In the first couple of lines, I import time and random. I need random to pick 4 random questions from this list of 14 questions. And I declare some of the variables that we use throughout the program. I've used house, IoT house, to be able to use the sensor reading from Quarky. And here's the initial declaration of all the questions. You can see it's a long list. There are 14 questions. Then the options, option A, all the questions in the next list. Option B in a separate list. Option C in a separate list. And this class or this list is used to keep track of which questions I have already asked. I'm going to run the program now so that you can see how the terminal shows which questions have been asked. Now let's look at the code to see how it is possible to pick 4 random questions and make sure that you never get the same question twice in one round. I use a for loop to ask the 4 questions. Then I pick a random number from 0 to 13 because there are 14 items in the list. And then I use a little while loop to keep checking whether that number that I've just picked is already in the list. So if it picks 4 again, yeah, it will go again and again until the number that you've just picked here is not in the empty list that we start with. And then it prints the question. Note that I use line breaks to display the options in separate lines. Keeps track of how many questions were answered correctly, and it makes sure that whether the user inputs a lower or uppercase letter, the program will always work. If the answer is incorrect, it will display the correct answer using the value here in the list of which option is the correct one, and then it will display the corresponding value in option list. Then after the 4 questions, it's just a simple calculation to say how many questions you've answered correctly out of the 4 questions that were asked by simply using division and multiplication and converting it or casting it as a string before it can be displayed. For the second scene, I've simply used animation where I use a for loop to move the car repeatedly. And that's how I managed to get the car to turn those corners gradually, because I turned 9 degrees 10 times instead of just turning 90 degrees to give it a more natural turn at the corners. It turns left and right. It's just a simple manual code. And then in the next scene, we use the face recognition. Yeah, it uses a little while loop to make sure that the face from the picture on the stage is recognized, added to the class before you carry on. Otherwise, it doesn't have anything to compare it to. Then when I press D, while I hold down the D key, camera turns on, it analyzes what's on the camera and compares it to the class that I already have created here. If it's the right face or face is recognized, I use a little for loop to open the door gradually. And then we will see the living room. Now, in the living room, we use hand recognition, and I play a little tune there that is built in onto picture box repeatedly. I use the IoT house module to read the temperature. This is for temperature from the digital port number 3, where I plug in the DHC sensor. And then when it reads it, the sprite reports what the value is in Celsius. I also use hand gestures here. It analyzes the hand using the camera, then follows the middle finger, position of the middle finger, the Y value of the position of the middle finger. So the higher I move my hand, the louder the music will be. The lower the position of the middle finger on the stage, the lower the volume will be. And when I press space, I go to the smart fridge. In the 5th scene, we do some object recognition in the fridge. Toby changes to a box, and I use the pen extension so that we can stamp squares around each object that is recognized. In this case, I've got 8 recognizable objects, and the for loop will go from 1 to 9, 1 more than the count, so that it can actually go from 1 up to 8, displaying the details for each object that is recognized. The box also changes size based on the size of the object that is recognized. Then the pen clears everything, so all the boxes disappear. And then Toby has some fun with ChatGPT, asking, briefly list 3 options for lunch based on the items in the fridge. The AI assistant will give us a few options, obviously not including cake and donuts. And then Toby asks, okay, but what about the cake and the donut? Then sarcastic AI responds that it's the main food groups. And then we ask friends AI what a friend would say about the cake and the donut, get a different answer. Interesting how ChatGPT knows that the first question about the healthy options and then the other 2 questions all relate and responds correctly. Then lastly, in scene 6, we use the waste sorting model, where I've included many objects, create a class for items that can be recycled and items that can be recycled. The waste sorter unit code I will just demonstrate in the machine learning model. Then lastly, in the last slide, I just thank you all for the amazing bootcamp, and we use ChatGPT to translate the language to Hindi.